Okay, welcome back everyone. We're looking at Durbanites FPL Game Week 7 preview. So we're starting off looking at the Crystal Palace Fulham game. Now, nothing much to say in this game, the second goalless draw of the season, so a lot of clean sheet pickups here. But looking at the two teams, Crystal Palace have some tough weeks coming up against Manchester United and Newcastle. Now, Manchester United may not be in the best form, but Crystal Palace also struggling. Um, Edward is now out until the 7th of October. And with Fulham, they've got a pretty tough session coming up against only Sheffield United, probably being their best chance, but no one that I really want to call out here. Looking at the Luton Wolves game, so again, both teams picking up a much needed point. My call out here for Luton is to go for Carlton Morris. He's got a double game week coming up and then one against Nottingham Forest. Now, he's been scoring pretty consistently for Luton, if I can say that, and you might want to look at him for this game week. Looking at Wolves, they've got a tough game coming up. Manchester City this week, I would not recommend anyone, and they've not had anyone in great form. They're picking up goals here and there. Looking at City and Arsenal in the next couple of weeks, I would avoid it completely. Then looking at Manchester City, then of course they have an easy win or a normal win against Nottingham Forest, and then they've got Wolves coming up this week, so should be good for the players. However, they've got Rodrigo, Bernardo Silva, and De Bruyne out with injuries, so you've got to look at Foden, Grealish, Kovacic, Nunez, or possibly Doku to come in. Um, and from Nottingham Forest side, Awani and Serge Aurier are definitely the players to watch, but they have Brentford this week who might be looking to come back strong. But then game week 8 and 9, it's possible they will get you some points. Looking at Brentford game, so Brentford again, like I say, are going off the boil after a good start, losing to Everton this week at home. Now, Mbeumo and Wissa have not been giving returns in the last 4 weeks after a very fast start. Some good fixtures coming up in the future, but I would suggest looking at replacing Wissa and holding Mbeumo for further weeks. At Everton, Doucouré is really the player in form, but I'm using that term lightly. And Calvert-Lewin is back, so he's definitely a proven goal scorer, so maybe worth looking up as a backup striker. Looking at their fixtures coming up, Brentford have a couple of good ones, except for the game week 8 against Manchester United, which could go either way. And then Everton still have a couple of good weeks where they could possibly get wins before the derby, the Merseyside derby with Liverpool. So just watch out for that one. Then looking at the Burnley Manchester United game, quite a scrappy game. Burnley had some chances but couldn't convert them, and then Manchester United converting a stunning goal with Bruno Fernandes. Johnny Evans looking better at 35 than he was at 25. Really good assist from him and a good game. Burnley again playing a double match, but Newcastle is a very tough one for them. I look at them get crushed in that game and then playing against Luton. But Burnley have an issue with their top striker, Lyle Foster, is still out until the next game week. Now, Manchester United have their own laundry list of injuries, but Crystal Palace may be tricky, but they did beat them in the Carabao Cup in midweek, and Bruno Fernandes was rested for that game, but he's looking in top form, so might be worth looking at them. They still have some good fixtures coming up ahead. Looking at the Arsenal Tottenham game, so that North London derby actually ended up finishing in a draw and a very, very bruising game. So as a result of that, you've got half a dozen knocks on the Arsenal side, really weakening the midfield. Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, all of them have picked up knots. Thomas Partey is out for a long time. So Bournemouth is not a big test, but the informed players out is likely to have an impact. And then they have two big games coming up in terms of Manchester City and Chelsea. So they might not play those players in this game against Bournemouth and take their chances. Spurs have also taken a knock, so Son and Madison are both nursing injuries. But I'm betting that they will play the season to counter Liverpool's midfield. It's really going to be a tough game otherwise. And then 2 game weeks where they can possibly play some alternate players. Just some injury update. Betancourt is back in training, so keep an eye on that story. He might be back in another couple of weeks. Moving ahead to the Brighton Bournemouth game. So Brighton were back in form, winning 3-1 at Bournemouth. Mitoma with 2 awesome goals. Brighton have a tough 3 weeks ahead of them. Aston Villa, Liverpool, Manchester City coming up. Not saying they can't win. I'm not saying they can't score, but it's going to be tough. And I would not back any clean sheets in those games. I would be quite surprised if they do get that. But again, Mitoma is a very, very good midfielder. Um, he's getting a lot of points out of a great price of 6.6. Evan Ferguson is back after his hat trick and small layoff, so might be worth looking at that. And Ansu Fati is still not getting a full game, but let's see how that goes. Now, Bournemouth face a weakened Arsenal, as we said, but their own informed striker, Dominic Solanke, who's got 3 goals and an assist, is suffering with a calf injury, so doubtful for this week. So, not much to call out from their point of view. Now, looking at Chelsea Aston Villa, Chelsea, they're really proving to be a problem for our FPL managers. They're struggling to hit any form, and they did win in the Carabao Cup in the midweek with Nicholas Jackson scoring, but reminder that he is suspended this week, and so they are in trouble there up front with Nkunku also out, and they are stretched in defense. A lot of injuries there. Reece James is injured. Chilwell is also out, and Malo Gusto is suspended. So really, really looking thin there, and Fulham will not be a pushover for them. Then they've got Burnley in the next week, but again, their form is not really there before they take on Arsenal. So not really recommending any Chelsea players right now. Aston Villa, they're confusing because they've had 4 wins against teams, but in the bottom half of the table, and 2 losses that they have come against teams at the top half. So at times, to me, it seems like Unai Emery is taking the low-hanging fruit and not risking injury by going too hard against the other contenders. But if we're looking at Aston Villa, you're looking at Matty Cash, Lucas Digne, Ollie Watkins, Musa Diaby, Douglas Luiz. They've all been in the points regularly, and they are the regular starters for Villa this season. So maybe a tricky week against Bournemouth, against Brighton coming up in game week 7, but then game week 8 and 9, look for them to be scoring those points. Now, looking at the Liverpool West Ham game, comfortable win for Liverpool 3-1. It's there. Except for Trent, Liverpool are one of the teams that are relatively injury free and they can select from their top tier. They've scored 3 goals in their last 4 games in all competitions. And if Spurs can't put Son and Madison on the field, Liverpool may prove too strong for them. Salah hasn't scored less than 5 points in any game this season if you can afford him. Soboslai and Jota scored in the Carabao Cup, so possibly informed players to look at. Nunes and Gakpo are a bit more of a gamble. Nunes getting more game time as his form improves, but the biggest goal threat right now is from that Liverpool midfield. Anderson has been big in defense, but 3-1 in the last 4 also means that clean sheet is not guaranteed. The Hammers are also fairly injury free and should have an easy trip to battered Sheffield United this week before 2 challenging game weeks against Newcastle and Aston Villa. Their midfield pairing of Bowen and Ward-Prowse has been immense, and Paqueta is always threatening. Also consider Areola as a good goalkeeper pick for this week. Now, looking at this, what can I say about this fixture? What an awesome way to end the weekend with a free scoring display from Newcastle. Spare thought though for West Fodringham from Sheffield United, 7 saves in this game, meaning he faced 15 direct shots in a single game. I'm not backing any players from Sheffield against the Hammers, but alternately, it looks like Newcastle are going to try and maximize on the easier run of fixtures and rack up the score. Many scorers, but the best picks for the week ahead from my side is Kieran Trippier with his corners and crosses, and Anthony Gordon, who's consistently in the goals and playing. They do have some injury worries up front. Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak, both with knocks at this moment in time, and Bruno Guimaraes, Harvey Barnes, Sven Botman, and Dan Burn, all of them doubtful to start, but could still start. I would still back them to put a few points in against Burnley, who are also struggling. Now, looking at the fixture rating, first let's look at the teams with favorable fixtures in the next 3 weeks. So we called out Brentford, Chelsea, and Everton, but again, and Luton. But of course, their form is what concerns us when we look at those, but well worth a look. Manchester United might be on the way back. Newcastle are definitely firing. And then if you look at Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, and Tottenham, maybe not to go for this week, but look at transitioning players away from the teams that have difficult fixtures into these teams, which have a nice 2 weeks coming up ahead. Looking at the teams that I would avoid, Crystal Palace for sure. They've got some tough games coming up. Wolves as well, and Burnley. Um, Brighton, I would definitely avoid. I don't think clean sheets are in their future, I think they could possibly get up some points. Someone like Mitoma, as an example, I think will always be in the points somewhere, but I think it's going to be a very difficult 3 weeks, and I would suggest moving their players out. Looking at Arsenal, also tough games coming up after the first game week. You're looking at Manchester City, Chelsea coming up for them, and then Manchester City themselves have Arsenal and Brighton coming up, so definitely no easy games. And West Ham after Sheffield United have Newcastle and Aston Villa. So just looking at the 3 week transition, Arsenal, Manchester City players, which I think a lot of us have in this league, we might look at moving them out, and Brighton as well. So if we look at Brighton, Arsenal, Manchester City, we might have to give up on them for the next 3 weeks or take our chances to see how that will impact us. So that's a wrap up for the Game Week 7 preview. Looking forward to the games and coming back with the results. I hope you're still enjoying the videos. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know how you would like this to play out. Until the next one, see you then.